Welcome to the Osmo Early Bird Podcast. It's your old pal Emac coming to you on a Saturday morning with one Adam Ship My Money Share as we're coming out of a nice Thanksgiving holiday, extending into the holiday weekends, and we've got rivalry games. So we're, of course, recording this on Friday night. If you had your alma mater playing today, hopefully they won. Mine's kicking off here in a couple minutes. So we're doing the podcast a little bit early so I can watch that. So let's just say go Huskies, go University of Washington. Adam, what's your alma mater again?
Salisbury University, Division III.
There we go, Salisbury. I'll have to. And what is their mascot? And I'm not making any jokes, no food jokes from me.
Seagulls.
The Seagulls. Okay, well that's a fierce mascot. So, or not?
Yeah. Very.
There we are. For some reason, I always think of Towson. So for those of you that don't know, Adam lives up in Maryland. I'm here in the Virginia area. So I'm learning all these new schools. And for whatever reason, I assume I think of that because that college is up by where you actually live. So.
Yeah, Towson's up by Baltimore. So, yeah, Towson's like an hour-ish from me. Salisbury's 2 hours.
Gotcha. All right. Well, now that everybody's heard that, let's talk a little bit of basketball. We have a 7-game slate. Everybody who is playing today, with the exception of Sacramento and Dallas, played on Friday night. So we may have some various injury updates. We'll hit the ones that we're aware of as we go by position here. The other thing you want to keep in mind is it is a 7:30 start. So a little bit different than some of our Saturdays. So this should be a fun one. We, of course, will go position by position here. Reminder, if you have not yet signed up for Osmo.com, what are you waiting for? Use the promo code EARLYBIRD, all one word. That will get you 2 weeks free. In a couple minutes, I'll tell you about how to get in with some of the cyber deals. That would be the cyber, what do we call that? Black Friday, that was today. Adam, I braved the stores, and then Cyber Monday is on Monday. Did you leave the basement?
No, I have not. I used to do like Black Friday shopping back when you couldn't just get everything online and it didn't last a week. But now I just don't see the incentive to go. Like I hate crowds and I hate waking up early. So I just don't see the point in actual Black Friday shopping.
Totally agree. So I did not wake up. Well, I woke up early, but not for this. So I cruised out around 2 o'clock, drove by the outlet mall, saw just miles of cars waiting to try to even get in. People were parking a couple complexes away, and just a stream of people were walking. I'm like, you guys are crazy. And I cruised on over there to Staples, and I picked up a new chair that needs to be assembled, of course. But that was my Black Friday purchase. You know what? It was not crowded at Staples, and they did have Black Friday prices, so that's perfect for me.
Yeah, that works out perfect.
No muss, no fuss. All right, let's get into the games here. We've got point guards, which is where we'll start. Of course, we'll be looking here at DraftKings, so we have a lot of multi-position eligible people, but we'll focus on what their primary positions are. Let's start off here with one John Wall. You and I are both Wizards. I don't know, fan might be too strong of a word at this point, Adam, but what are you thinking here about John Wall? He's going to be on a back-to-back coming home from Toronto. He will be in Washington and will be taking on the Pelicans, who seemingly are playing every day, it feels like. What do you like here with Mr. John Wall and the dysfunctional Wizards?
It's a pretty appealing matchup here. I mean, two fast-paced teams. Neither one has been great defensively this season. Obviously the Wizards have been an absolute train wreck, but New Orleans hasn't been great either. And while I think this Washington team as a whole is going to be a mess for a while as we try and figure out what rotation Scott Brooks is actually going to land on, and I think it's going to vary a lot by night, the backcourt should be fine with Wall and Beal. They both should be locked into 36 to 40 minutes depending on the game. So I think that Wall's a pretty appealing option here. His price tag's dropped on DraftKings as well. He's down to 8,500. He was 9,000 or 9,100 if I remember correctly on Friday night. So that's pretty nice as well. I think it's a pretty good spot for Wall. So I do like him.
Here's an interesting one. I was just looking at the full schedule. So Houston and Cleveland tips off at 7:30. 3 of the games go at 8, and then 3 of them go at 8:30. That's it. No late night hammer. So, hey, we can watch all the games and get a good night's sleep and get up for a little NFL lineup construction. Don't forget, we've got some free shows in front of the paywall. We've got Dave Loughran and Ben Jazraz Raza. They will be starting at 11 o'clock. And then you have Up Till Lock with one Josh Engelman and Chris Spags. So we got you covered there. Yes, we did have some Thursday football, but not to fear. Only 2 teams are on a bye this week, so it's a relatively normal player pool, at least for what we're used to. Next week gets crazy because I believe the buys are done as of this week. Looking at some other positions here, just hitting on the guys who are dinged up. It's mostly people that we know are going to be out for some time. Obviously, Curry's going to be out for another couple weeks. He was in, it looks like, a multi-car accident, if I saw on Twitter correctly, where he looks like he rear-ended somebody. Fender bender, I must say. And it looked like he was standing there next to the car on the highway with the cops. So, hey, there you go. Hopefully he didn't hurt the groin anymore. George Hills can be out for about 2 weeks. He has a sore shoulder. And then that looks to be the main ones that are out. And then we'll have to worry if anybody gets dinged up in the interim. So looking up and down the rest of our list here, Adam, we have Chris Paul going against Cleveland. That one feels like it could be a rout, but Paul at 7,700 starts to get interesting. De'Aaron Fox not on a back-to-back going into Golden State. They will be on a back-to-back. He is down to 7,000, or I guess that's kind of about where he's been hovering lately. He sort of crests up and then dips back down when he has bad shooting performances, but he's someone I kind of like. What do you like amongst that duo or anybody else as you go down the pricing list?
I like CP3 here. I haven't been playing him a lot lately, but he's been on bigger slates where there's been a ton of point guard options, and that's not really the case here. So the fact that he's playing, obviously his ceiling is a bit lower when he plays with Harden. It's much less likely that he goes out there and throws up, a 60 fantasy point game or something along those lines. But on this particular slate, there's not a really strong mid-range, I don't think, especially when you consider that guys like Zach LaVine and Drew Holiday are shooting guard eligible on DraftKings, and they're just shooting guards on FanDuel. So Chris Paul just stands out to me in this spot as a high floor guy who does have a pretty decent ceiling for the price point if his shots are falling. So I think he's pretty interesting as a mid-range guy. Obviously Westbrook at the top is a really good play if you can get to him as well. But yeah, I like Paul. I like De'Aaron Fox. His price tag has come up a bit on DraftKings, but that's not really concerning because he was just egregiously underpriced when he was 6,100 against Houston and 64 or 6,500 against Utah. So, yeah, 7K here against Golden State. It's not the same fast-paced Golden State team without Curry out there, but still not a bad spot here for De'Aaron Fox at $7,000.
All right, I've got 2 more. Actually, this is like double reverse revenge, sort of. Remember me games, whatever you want to call it. Zach Attack going against one Mr. Rose, Derrick Rose, a Rose by any other name. These guys aren't really competing with anybody on their respective teams' backcourts for minutes. We do have Levine checking in at 7,800. Derrick Rose, though, 6,500. This one is in Minnesota. An intriguing spot for both of these guys. Minnesota did play in the afternoon game on Friday, and Chicago is playing at night. So both these teams are on a back-to-back, but Minnesota should be a little bit more rested, we would like to think. Anybody amongst that pair, and I've got one dumpster dive guy for you.
I like Levine a lot. I was going to talk about him at shooting guard, but it's a good matchup here against a Minnesota team that should struggle defensively. It's the same thing we've been talking about with Levine. He's going to play 37 or 38 minutes. He's going to get up 20 plus shots. He's going to be inefficient, and that lowers his median projection. But there's no question his ceiling is through the roof for this price tag. So I do like him quite a bit.
All right, last guy I've got here that stands out, a value guy, and we just have 7 games. I'm sure some value will pop up here and there because it's the NBA, and it always seems to do so. But we have JJ Barea at 4,500, and he is going to be coming off of 3 days of rest because the Dallas Mavericks last played on the 21st. So he is going against Boston, who are on a back-to-back, and may, depending on what's going on with Al Horford, maybe playing a little bit more of a 3-guard rotation or smaller than they typically do, which should bode well for Berea because we know that Dallas likes to go with those 3-guard lineups themselves. Any thoughts on the old guy who did have the last 72 hours to rest?
No, not really. I mean, that just doesn't seem totally necessary to go there.
Fun hater. That's what we call that. A fun hater. Moving on to shooting guard here. We do have Dennis Schroeder. He did get the start on Friday night. So we'll have to see what happens there. Now I lost my note here. I forget. Was it Alex Abrinas? Who missed that got
Diallo's out, Ferguson's out.
You. Oh, good God. Did you see that injury, by the way?
No, I didn't see it. But Abrinas is also a game time decision, so we're still waiting on that news.
All right. But Dennis Schroeder, 6,000. That's not too shabby of a price. We do know that he has 40 fantasy point upside, even with everybody healthy there for the Thunder. They'll be going against Denver, but this one is in OKC, which makes me kind of intrigued by him. Buddy Hield, I think, is 5,500 on DraftKings. There's someone you can use at one of the wing spots. He's okay. Another guy I don't hate. He's very, 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 I'm going to say one more, very shooting dependent, but it's Eton Moore. We know he's playing the Pelicans on Friday night, but in the 2 games prior to that, he got up 25 and 16 shots. And if you look at his game log, he's got in his last 7 games at least double digits, and he's got one other one with 18, another one with 23. He's just been absolutely gunning, and they seem to be letting him do so, Adam. He's been putting up a lot of real points. Of course, he does have a relatively empty box score, not many hustle or helper stats, generally not getting any blocks or steals at all, and usually 1 to 2 assists per game. Thoughts on him or anybody else down in the bargain bin here for us?
Yeah, I mean, Moore for me, it obviously he's been playing really, really well, and he has a great matchup against Washington. I just still can't bring myself to pay close to a $5,000 price tag or above a $5,000 price tag for him because, like you said, it is a pretty empty box score, and it is based on him making a lot of shots and also taking a lot of shots. And it's just not something you can really count on him for. Like, I would much rather, find $200 and get to Buddy Hield or save $1,300 and get to Bogdanovich against Bogdan Bogdanovich, that is, against Golden State. So, both of those guys. I mean, I think you can also look to Eric Gordon, who we talked about on Friday. He's been awful, but he's still playing, 30-plus minutes. He's still really cheap. And at some point, he's going to start making his threes, and he's going to get up more of them. So from a ceiling perspective, I think that Eric Gordon's a pretty decent option.
All right, up there at the top, any interest in James Harden, I guess, would be the one guy that we're looking at. Of course, this will be 3 and 4 for Houston. It'll be 3 and 4 for a lot of teams.
Harden, yeah, I mean, he's in the middle of what seems like a decent game against Detroit on Friday night. But since the Carmelo Anthony trade going into Friday night's game, he had close to a 40% usage rate, which was really good to see. Not sure, don't expect it to stay that high, but it is good to see him being more assertive offensively. And we've seen him come closer to, his actual ceiling. Obviously a really nice spot here against Cleveland, but you do have some underpriced guys at the position. We already talked about Zach LaVine, but you have DeMar DeRozan's price tag dropping. Now, I said pretty much all season long that I thought he was overpriced up around, $9,000. So the fact that you have him back to $8,000 doesn't mean that he's super underpriced to me, but it is a much more fair price point, and I'll start being interested in DeRozan again at that point. Bradley Beal, 7,400 in what should be a really fast-paced game against the Pelicans is really appealing. And then Chris Middleton's just been too cheap with a price tag around $7,000 on both sites. Should play 34 to 36 minutes, assuming that game stays competitive. And it's not a bad Spurs defense, but it's just not the same team that it, obviously that it has been in the past. So I think that Middleton's a little bit too cheap.
All right. Let's talk about the forwards here. I'm going to group 3 of them together here. We've got Giannis Antetokounmpo at 11,200. Another $200 higher, you have Anthony Davis. $600 lower, you've got Kevin Durant. All 3 of these guys, of course, are on a back-to-back. Rate these guys with your first look for us, because if you're not going to spend on Harden, I'm assuming you'll want to spend on one of these guys.
Yeah, I mean, Durant's been my guy. with Curry out, and if we assume Draymond's out, I haven't seen news on if Draymond's going to sit on Saturday, but he was ruled out pretty early on Friday, so we'll have to keep an eye on that one. But without Draymond or Steph on the floor, you're just looking at a usage rate for Durant of around 36.5%, an assist percentage in the 30s as well, playing around 38 minutes a night in a up-tempo matchup against the Kings. So it's just hard for me not to like Durant, where he's priced down because he hasn't really been shooting that well. Going into Friday night's game, he had made 2 of his last 22 three-pointers. That's obviously not something that's going to continue, and he's just not priced correctly for the opportunity that he has without Curry or Draymond on the floor. So I love Giannis, and I think it's a perfectly fine spot for him as well, especially because the Spurs have struggled in transition this year in the bottom 5 or 6 teams defensively in points per possession in transition. And that's a spot where, Giannis can absolutely go nuts. But where Durant is a little bit cheaper, unless there's projected to be a huge ownership discrepancy, I'm going to go to Durant just because I think they have virtually the same ceilings.
All right. A little bit of breaking news here. Shout out for the Atlanta Hawks. They were able to get 23 points in the first quarter against the Celtics. Of course, the Celtics got 45 in the first quarter.
35 in the first quarter, yeah.
4-5.
What? Oh, 45.
45.
Wow.
Do you think the Wizards will have 45 at the half?
That's a really good question.
Oh, all right. Back to more pertinent things that affect the DFS world. LaMarcus Aldridge just has not been hitting his shots, shooting barely over 40%. That is very unlike him. At some point, things are going to start to go his way, but goodness, at 7,600, you really got to start considering him. Nikolai Mirotic in an intriguing matchup going against the Wizards, who just are really going to have no answer for New Orleans, but at least both teams will be playing very, very fast. So he is someone that we can look at. And depending on how thin-handed or thin-manned, again, that Boston is, they, of course, were without the services of Al Horford. Maybe we see someone like Jason Tatum picking up some additional minutes in addition to Marcus Morris and Aaron Baines, depending on what's going on with them. I bring it up because sometimes Morris doesn't always play a lot on back-to-backs because he generally is really dinged up at any given point in the season. He's amazing when he gets the minutes, but when he only gets 18 to 20 minutes, he gets you 18 to 20 fantasy points, and he is more priced for needing to get you 25 to 30 with gusts up to 40. What do you like here in the mid-tier?
Yeah, it'll depend on Boston's lineup as far as what I'm interested in for Tatum and Morris. If Horford's out again, I don't like Morris as much when he's starting, just because you do see a usage drop when he plays alongside Kyrie and alongside Tatum. And I don't expect it to make a big impact on his minutes. So I kind of back off him when he's starting. I like him more off the bench. Hayward, I think, is interesting, still very reasonably priced, should play around 32 minutes off the bench regardless. If Morris is in the starting lineup, that should lead to even more usage for Hayward with that second unit. So I do prefer Hayward to Morris. Jason Tatum is a decent play. I don't love him, but wouldn't be surprising to see him have a ceiling game here. But yeah, I would prefer Hayward out of that entire Boston team.
It's kind of interesting and I know this has been pointed out on various shows, and I know that Stratford thinks it's pretty funny and likes to do it. There are basically 4 viable players amongst the first 60 at small forward that are small forward eligible only. Everybody else has multi-position eligibility at this position.
It's pretty insane.
It's pretty wild. So casting a wide net, any other thoughts here on some of the other small forward / power forwards as we transition over perhaps a Rudy Gay, a Jabari Parker, Robert Covington starting to get some heavy minutes, unlike Dario Saric. But Covington's been playing a lot since he cracked the lineup there for Minnesota. He's got 38, 37, 37 in his last 3 games. Any of those names sound appealing?
I like Chetty and I like Jabari. Parker obviously is going to be probably pretty frustrating a lot this season because he's not very consistent, but he has all the opportunity in the world. And Chandler Hutchison missed again on Friday after it seemed like he was going to play. If he's out, that's Parker's direct backup, and it should lead to even more playing time for Parker. If Hutchison's in, you still are probably looking at around 34 minutes. since they switched the starting lineup to have Parker, Levine, and Archie, Parker has about a 26% usage rate. He leads the team in potential rebounds. He also has more potential assists than I expected. He's third or fourth on the team in that regard. So I think that in this spot against Minnesota, it's a pretty appealing, matchup for Parker. And then Chetty is still cheap, and he's just back into playing a ton of minutes here. Larry Nance has gone back to solely playing center, at least going into Friday. I haven't obviously seen what's going on in that game, but it appears that they've gone back to Larry Nance just being the backup center. J.R. Smith no longer on the team. It just opens up a boatload of minutes for Chetty Osman to play at the 4 or the 3, depending on what the starting lineup is. But either way, just huge minutes for him. He's not overly productive on a per minute basis, but he's just too cheap for the amount of minutes that he's playing.
All right, we're going to scrape the bottom of the barrel here. I'm looking at 2 different guys here for potential cheapies. Again, things will change, but we always are looking for some placeholder value. We know that Alfonso McKinney has missed the last 4 games or 5 games. He's got a foot issue. We know that Jordan Bell's really not playing any minutes. This is a matchup here against a very frisky Sacramento Kings team. Now, this will, of course, be at the Oracle, so that's a little bit more helpful for the Golden State Warriors. However, Sacramento is not on a back-to-back. So first guy, who is getting the love here? Do you think it will be Jerebko, or do you think it will be Kevon Looney from the Warriors, assuming Alfonso's out and assuming that Draymond continues to sit?
Neither one, really. We haven't seen a starting lineup on Friday, but the game prior to that, they had Cook, Thompson, Iguodala, Durant, and Jones starting. They basically had Jones and Looney split the time at the 5. You got about 16 minutes from Jerebko at the 4. You got Damian Lee playing a bunch of minutes. So the second unit kind of just ended up being useless from Golden State with that new lineup.
All right. Well, they were kind of the feeder into the real guy I'm really, really curious about. Marvin Bagley III. He is 4,500, Adam. We have seen him top 28 fantasy points in his last 3, including one where he hit for 40. Is he someone that you are intrigued by with the way his minutes have increased somewhat over the last handful of games?
Yeah, I am, because we saw, reports that Sacramento was basically telling Dave Yeager that he had to play Bagley more. And since that happened, we've seen that. Bielitsa has been playing 23, 24 minutes a night. And we've seen some games where Bagley plays backup center. We've seen other games where he just plays in place of Bielitsa. Last game against Utah, he played a bunch of backup center. The game before that, he basically just took minutes from Bielitsa. But regardless, we've been seeing a pretty consistent 26 to 27 minutes from Marvin Bagley, and he's been pretty productive this season. If Draymond's out, there's really not a whole lot of front court defense that you're too concerned about from Golden State. So at 4,500 on a 7-game slate, I am pretty interested in Bagley.
All right, as we continue here, let's finish up with the pivot position. Karl-Anthony Towns been a little bit disappointing lately, even though he is the main guy in town now that Jimmy Butler's moving on. Nikola Jokic, tough matchup there against Steven Adams. We do have an intriguing guy. For those of you that are going to be chasing some box scores, it looks like Clint Capella is on his way. This is Friday night, and they're heading into the third quarter here for Houston and Detroit. But it looks like he's on his way to his third 50 fantasy point game in a row. He's going against Cleveland. Seems like a decent spot for him. Any of those guys look to make your short list, perhaps a Julius Randle in a high-paced game against the Washington Wizards?
Yeah, I mean, Davis obviously in a phenomenal spot against the Wizards, but going even lower than that, Capella should play around 34 to 36 minutes here against Cleveland. Perfectly fine spot there. Really nice spot for Karl-Anthony Towns against the Bulls. Jokic, I'd be a little concerned about. It'll be interesting to see how many minutes he plays on Friday. But the last time Denver was on a back-to-back, Mike Malone talked about wanting to flatten his rotation a bit in those back-to-back games and not play his starters as many minutes. Jokic in particular played like 28 minutes in regulation, 3 total in an overtime game on the first half, and then the second half was a blowout. So I'm really interested to see what the rotation actually ends up looking like on Friday, and that'll help me project minutes for Jokic on Saturday. But a difficult matchup regardless. I think that I would prefer going to Towns or saving some money and going to Capella.
All right, that sounds good. Reminder, we do have a show on Saturday. It will go off around 11 or so. That will be Adam and I. We will be going game by game, much more in-depth, at a much more leisurely pace. This is just the first look for those of you that are heading out to do errands a little bit early or doing some yard work or something like that. Want to bring us along with you. Got to take the kids off to the park. Bring us along. It's a good listen. And if you want to sign up, here's the promo code. We have Cyber Month, all one word. If you want to get a month of premium, Osmo.com for half price, use the promo code Cyber Month. If you would like, and you already know that you love the Osmo product, you can use Cyber Year, and you will get a 12-month subscription for a 10-month price. That's a savings of $120. That's 10 months of pay for 12 months of play. It is the best deal that is out there, and these deals will not last forever because, hey, they're going to last through Cyber Monday. With that, you can follow Adam at ShipMyMoneyDFS. I am at EMACDFS, and of course, it is Osmo_COM over there on the Twitter machine. With that, gamers, good luck.